guess it's now time for the reappointment of John and myself.
Yes, it is. And Mary Jane is here to do that for you.
Yes, I have the oaths of office, which I'm going to administer to you two gentlemen, so keep it in that. After I administer the oaths, I'll have you sign. And then I will make copies for you. So you can take the oath at the same time. Go ahead and do that. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend
That I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United
and the Constitution of the State of California
Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well
and I will
and faithfully
and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
We'll sign.
Sign away. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been 4 years since I did this last time. I was thinking, surely it's only been 2.
For us, it's been 12.
All right, and then I will make copies and I'll have copies for you later.
Thanks.
Okay? You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Got it?
Got it.
We just wanted to make sure you folks knew that a couple of rookies are going to consider your events tonight. We've been actually doing this for 12 years.
So are you. You've been here 12 years too, so another 4. Hang on.
Let's do a roll call.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Richardson?
Here.
Garnon?
Here.
Eaton? And Jensen?
Here.
Hey, per California state law, anybody that would like to address the commission this evening on any matters not on the agenda, you may have 5 minutes to do so. If there's anything that anybody in the audience would like to address, go ahead. You have an opportunity. If not, we'll move on to the meeting, and I'll look for a review of the minutes from the prior meeting of June 12th. Gentlemen? Is there a motion?
No, I'll go ahead and move that we accept it. I can't find anything that's outlined. I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Richardson, second by Commissioner Jensen. Need a discussion on minutes? All those who vote to approve? Aye.
Abstain.
Thanks, Gary. I forgot that you were here. All right, thank you. All right. Tonight, there's 2 items of public hearing. The first one will be an application by Evan and Mike Royce for tentative parcel map to divide a 9.5 acre parcel into 4 separate parcels with a remainder. Located at 120A Preston Place / Roble Road. The assessor parcel number is 035-11004, and it's in an RE residential estate zone. Staff?
Thank you, sir. As in your staff report that is before you tonight, the acreage count on the parcel is 9.5 acres. It is zoned residential estate, and the general plan designation is estate residential, both of which allow for densities up to 1 unit per acre. So could have been 9 units proposed. The applicant instead is coming in with a tentative parcel map, proposing 4 new parcels with the remainder around the existing structure that's on the property now. Access to the project is proposed to be from Roble Road, which is a city-maintained residential street. It is a 28-foot wide public road with a rolled curve in the area. Excuse me. The 4 new parcels would all be accessed through that access point. And due to the fact that there are only 4 units proposed, the city engineer is comfortable with the road design that is proposed, which is a 20-foot paving with 2-foot shoulders on either side. So the maintenance of that roadway, since it's not a full 40-foot right-of-way, would be privately maintained, although it would be a public access and open to the public for access for all 4 of the parcels. Excuse me. The parcel criteria, the dimensions of all the parcels proposed clearly meet the minimum requirements. The property is landlocked other than the access agreement that the property owner has proposed with the agreement with the gas tank lot adjacent to it through the use of that property. The location of the roadway that would access to that would be dependent upon what they do with those tanks. There's been discussion, and the applicant can verify where the discussions stand currently, but there have been discussions of undergrounding the tanks, which provides a little bit more room on the property for the roadway. Currently, right now, due to fire code and building code, there is a requirement for how close to a property line or a road that those tanks can be built. So any new roadways would also have to meet that requirement. We did send this out for advisory agency comments. Included in your packet are letters that we received from TUD concerning the utilities availability, both for water and sanitary sewer, to the proposed new 4 parcels. There are some requirements that they will need to make and then show the city prior to building permit application that those have been satisfied. The city engineer also had a number of requirements for the final map, things that would need to be placed on that map. As from a CEQA standpoint, we did have biological and cultural resources studies done for the property. And the information in the biology report was included in your packet. There were 2 ponds located on the property, and although a lot of people, especially in the foothills, don't consider the smaller ponds things that they have to deal with, Army Corps of Engineers says otherwise. So we did get the biologist to give us the requirements that we would need for setbacks from those pond areas, and the confirmation that the existing road alignment would work through that area. So those are all covered within that. The cultural report was not included in your packet due to the nature of the cultural report. However, all of the items that were identified were basically related to the existing house and the fact it was older than 50 years old. They did the further analysis on the things that they found older than 50 years old, and none of them qualified for the national or the state register. So they've all been cleared as non-significant items. Other than that, the 4 parcels, since they are large acreage parcels, have adequate room on them for building pads and driveway locations off of the access that's being provided by the developer. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And then also to bring to your attention, I forgot I should have started with this. At your spot tonight, there were 2 emails that staff received for you to read. And then I put a couple different packets of these up there intermixed. And these are pictures from one of the speakers tonight, so he will reference those, I'm sure. It's a member of the public that would like to speak at the public hearing. We had numerous calls and people come to the counter concerning the project. It's been a mixture of for and against. We've also had people who have called and said that they will not attend based on some of the conflict that they have felt in the neighborhood over the project. So just wanted the commission to be aware of some of the input that we've had at the staff level over the project as we go on. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I'd like a point of order, please. There's members in the audience here that can't hear. So I don't know, maybe if you should speak up here instead of... They need donations for a new sound system, by the way. Anyway, so people are having trouble hearing.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Can y'all hear me okay? I'm usually project all right. Turn the volume up a little bit. Just a teeny.
It's up as high as it goes.
Hello?
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 I can't even hear myself.
How's that? Well, we'll just speak a little louder. Thank you. Just from a planner's standpoint, Paula, is this the only approach to this property for this purpose?
It is a landlocked piece of property. So currently there is no frontage on any public right-of-way. The existing structure that is on the property has access through what is called Preston Place, but that's not an actual road from the sense that the county nor the city recognize that as a road nor maintain it as a road. There's a private easement for that unit only to use that access down through there, and the connection to 49 is literally a dirt, turn off onto 49. So as you'll recall from other projects that we've discussed, 49's is a Caltrans project or roadway, and any improvements along that area would have to have the full intersection improvements. That would be a Caltrans road. There is not access through there other than for the existing residential structure, which would maintain the current access through there. Other than that, according to the city engineer, any additional access would be an overburdening of that easement. The rest of the property boundaries are adjacent to other parcels. There is no other access point.
Paula, is it correct that even if Preston Way was to be pushed through, there'd have to be a number of adjustments to the existing houses that are there?
Sure.
Yeah,
We can't hear you.
the question was if Preston Way or Preston Place was to be used, would there be something that had to be done to the existing houses there? Yeah, the answer would be more than likely. I can't say definitively yes, but just knowing the size of the little dirt track that runs through there, it is not a city standard street, and once you get down to the 49 right-of-way, for sure, Caltrans would require the full tapering and radiuses and all that, because 49 is an arterial road. Typically, you don't put additional contacts on an arterial road. For a project like this, you would put it onto a residential road, which is what the project proposes.
Well, what I was relating to was that I think there's like 5 houses up in that cluster there. And to bring Preston Lane, or whatever it's called, place through, there'd have to be some moving of the houses or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think there's
So I don't think it
adequate
would
distance.
work,
Yeah.
even if Caltrans was to allow it.
So to clarify this, the only access that the owner of this property enjoys right now is off of Preston Place.
Yes,
It's the only legal access that they have.
yes,
But only access for one house.
exactly. Just for one, not for any future units.
And it's a fairly complicated driveway situation. You look at an aerial of it, and it's pretty convoluted there.
Oh, I have a question for you. I know you're not an attorney. However, if we deny this, where would the developer be able to go? Does he have a legal right to that property and therefore could force his way by a lawsuit? Because we're saying, no, you can't come in, but yet he owns property and there is access. So there would probably be a lawsuit. Isn't it probably very possible?
I can't speak for the applicant in that case. There are certain findings that the commission would have to make in order for a denial. And there are things like it doesn't meet the general plan, it doesn't meet the zoning. Those are the type of findings that you have to make, and it does meet the general plan, it does meet the zoning. So we can go through those denial findings if the commission would like. Staff did not think that the findings could be made, and that's why we did not present them.
So legally, by getting permission from the lot owner that has the tanks, he can legally do this.
Yes, with the access that is a private agreement from an adjacent property owner to provide a point of access to a public right-of-way was a solution.
What propane company owns that? Is that,
JS West.
Dana
JS
Mayo.
what?
Dana Mayo, JS West.
They don't own it.
Dana Mayo owns it.
We've got that thing. But,
So two property owners can agree to provide access in a situation like this where it's landlocked. And as long as the right-of-way is adequate for fire department access, and the city engineer has reviewed the design preliminary of the proposed roadway, and those have all been found to be adequate for what the city would require in similar situations.
is this picture the house that would be to the southeast of the new road? All these pictures are that house.
Yes, they've been provided by one of the property owners who wanted to present that to
And the stake here is where
you.
that road is going to be
Yes.
if this passes. Okay.
So basically, where our hands are kind of tied is because I've been down O'Hara and down below and tried to drive those roads or dead ends into driveways, hoping that there would be an access. But, so access is off of Roble Road right now, that's about it.
Yeah, if you look at, on page 3, there's the inset of the zoning map. I know it's a little small and hard to see, but if you look at it, there is no direct access to either of those roads you just mentioned. There are other lots involved that are either themselves landlocked, or you would have to go through multiple lots to access either of them. And then just to bring to note, excuse me, this is also a flat map. It does not take into account any topography. So even though on a map, when you're looking at it, it may be like, oh yeah, let's just put it straight through here. The topography may not work for that through those areas as well.
Is Mr. Royce here now?
Yes, he's
I would
here.
like to get his take on his consideration about doing this and how he looked at all access, kind of hear from him what he found and why he wants to go off of Roble Road.
I'll invite him up after the staff.
Okay, great, that's fine.
And folks, you'll have an opportunity to comment tonight once I open the public hearing. So right now, we're just trying to get the X's and O's sorted. Are there any other questions for Paula?
Yeah, I don't know if Paula could answer this one because of the topography and the location of the tanks that are there, this road can't be pushed to the left at all.
It depends on what the ultimate solution between the property owner of the tank lot is and the applicant as to what they are going to do. If they're going to leave the tanks in place, it does lock it. If they're going to either underground them or change the configuration or whatever, it may change.
How big are those tanks? Are they community tanks?
They are community, but they're-
I was out there, and actually, those tanks are big enough that they block the view of people coming south on Roble, that you almost have a blind zone for the people coming up Roble to move out. That's why there would have to be a stop sign there, but they're very large, and it would be a fantastic concept if the road could be moved over. And that's something that I'm sure I'd like to consider looking into.
Yeah, there's fire code is really the driving for where the driving code for where the road is located, because the fire code has a dimension of how close to a roadway a tank can be. And it's a little difficult in the situation because the location of it pushes that roadway over. You know, depending on if there's another solution that they can come up with, they may be able to move it, but that's something you'd have to ask the applicant. I don't know where those negotiations stand.
I've seen this done before in subdivisions where there are community tanks and everybody's gas is metered from that point. They contract with a distributor.
Yeah.
They're active tanks now, I'm sure they're in
Yes.
use, right?
Yes.
Any other questions for Paula or Michelle? Is the applicant here? Would you come up, please?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Evan?
Yes.
So you don't own obviously you don't own the tank site, but you've been able to strike some sort of an agreement with the person for road access, I guess.
That is correct.
As a part of this whole.
We have an agreement to use that parcel as our access to the parcels that are being created. The existing remainder would still be accessed from where it is now. And in order to comply with fire setbacks, we have decided to bury those tanks as a solution, which we thought would be a value add aesthetically and for safety purposes as well. So you would no longer have to look at them, and additionally, for if you ever had fire come up that hill or anything like that, it's a better solution.
So if this was approved and it just as presented, the remainder portion, the remainder house, in essence the fifth parcel, that would be still accessed out of Preston Place.
Correct.
So the traffic impact is really from the four residences.
That is correct. Yes.
Is it possible to move the road over if the tanks are going underground? Have you looked into that to take some of the pressure off the people on the right? Mr. Piper.
Yeah. I'll address it kind of generally, but I'll let our consultant, our surveyor, get a little more detail. But we'll push it as far as we can that way and try to minimize how, it disturbs the neighbor on that side, as long as we comply with the fire setbacks and we fit within that right of way. And it's gradually sloping up in that area. So there are some topographical considerations, but like I said, definitely we'll push it as far that way as we can. I'll kind of just go into my kind of concept of what we try to do here. If you look at that parcel, the zoning and general plan designation would allow us to do twice as much density in there. We didn't want to do that because we wanted to keep space from the existing neighbors to try to make it less intrusive upon them. If we were to come in and do a subdivision to where we were doing the maximum density, it would push these homes much closer, which, like I said, is less desirable for sure to the neighbors. And additionally, our vision for the parcels there is to build high-end custom homes. And with the hillside, there's some nice views right there. We see a market in the city, an infill project with couple acre parcels with public utilities, with nice new roads. It's wonderful access going up there, up to that point, that complies with Subdivision Map Act, that complies with cul-de-sac length limits. It's really, it seemed like a product that people would be wanting and in demand. So we think it's a good project, and we think that people will be happy to build their homes there. So that's kind of the vision coming off of that area. It's more desirable. We looked at access from the lower side. I think it's less desirable, and also there were legal constraints that we didn't see a way to overcome, which is why we proposed it this way. I think even if you were able to access it from the lower side, I think it's a different market, and I think that it would probably be less viable to do bigger parcels. I think you'd want to have cheaper, lower priced homes that would probably only pencil out if they were smaller parcels, which would add density, which would, I think, irritate the neighbors even more. So that's why we wanted to keep them bigger, keep them nicer. So that's the business plan and the vision that we have for it. And like I said, public sewer, public water, we already have those accessed at the site, which is very rare. It's a benefit to be able to have that 6-inch mains already there, ready to go with manholes. So, is there any other specific questions, or?
Was there any consideration given for maybe a barrier wall or a plant barrier against Lot 15 there?
We talked about doing some kind of wall,
yeah.
And I think the concern, with Jerry was that when you're pulling out, it can create potential for blind spots, like I was talking, and we don't want to create a blind spot where it could cause accidents.
Right. Well,
so it's kind of a safety thing.
It could be set back, or
yeah.
It could be landscaping, or
I'd be happy to put some
sort of like that, just as kind of a sound barrier.
Yeah.
At the very least.
I'm open to any ideas like that. Happy. We've reached out to a lot of neighbors. My brother went door to door and knocked on a lot of the doors. I've had several phone conversations, and I've tried to make an attempt as much as I can to appease the neighbors. And I was told by several that even if it was one house driving through there, that it would be unacceptable. And so if you have ideas and conditions, if you want to add vegetation, more than happy to accommodate those concerns. So
this proposed road, so if I understand it correctly, it'll be county owned but privately maintained? No. That's coming off of the
private.
It'll be publicly dedicated but privately maintained.
Yes.
Right,
So
the access from Rebel Road would be maintained by those 4 parcels.
Okay.
And so part of what would happen between now and final mapping would be the language that created that maintenance agreement for those 4 parcels to maintain it, but the access would be a public access. It'd be dedicated as a public road.
And sized for fire codes.
Right.
Yep. Any other?
Well, Mr. Rice is here. Anybody else have any questions?
Well, your project man is going to be up. I have a couple of questions for him. Is he here now? Or you'll be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Just
Trade
fine.
spots?
Yeah. Whenever you're done, fine. I just
Sure.
want to make sure.
And if you have any other questions, I can come up. Thank you, guys.
Hello, I'm Dave Ragland. I'm the Royce's land surveyor and engineer, and I'm here to answer any technical questions you might have.
David, I have a question that goes back to where we're talking about this problem with this. Right now, from what I can see, that road that was coming up the hill is going to be about 2 feet, 3 feet away from this man's property. And being that there's a possibility of those tanks being underground, then that could mean one of the greatest things for this gentleman and the other people is to move the road over. Is that at all been considered? Have you thought about it to ease the pressure on the people there? Is that reality? Is that out of the question?
We would definitely consider moving it over as much as is practical. You'll note that we're trying to get down to the elevation of building sites, and as we move away from that person's property, we're going uphill on Roble
Even,
Road.
10 feet or 15 feet to keep that.
Yeah.
The gentleman has a cat, and he's out there walking around. If he moved over 15 or 10 feet, that would take a lot of the pressure off his home and his property. That concerns me, where that road comes up. It's so close. It's 2 feet away from his sidewalk there.
We were looking at building it where the slopes were best and safest for the users of the road. Now, there may well be some balance in that. There is still some setback from the tanks to a roadway, so there's a limit, even if the tanks are buried, which I think the Royces, they're willing to bear the cost of burying the tanks.
Dave, was there any thought of moving the tanks back a little bit onto the proposed Lot 2? I mean, just as a suggestion.
That's an interesting question, and has moving them horizontally been discussed at all?
We talked about actually moving them onto like an area where the new parcels would be created. The issue that we had, and I don't know if this is perfectly accurate the way I'm articulating it, but there was different zonings and general plan designations on our parcel and that small parcel, to where doing a lot line adjustment or something like that would have been an issue because of the inconsistency between those designations on the two parcels. So that was basically nixed as an idea because it just wasn't, it couldn't be done. Turning them the other direction, whatever we can do to keep them as far up that hill, I'm happy to do. The other thing is, you have to look at it, there's a right-of-way there, and the pavement's not gonna take up all of that right-of-way. I'm happy to push it as far, there's a requirement, they're saying we have to have 40 feet. We can push it as far to that side as possible. Another thing to consider that I wanna be careful of, I don't wanna push the tanks any farther up the hill because the neighbor on the uphill side has landscaping there that I don't wanna disturb. And if we had to push them farther up that way, I think some of it actually, I'm not positive, but I think it comes past the line a little bit, and I don't want to disturb that, so that's why that footprint there was kept, The other thing we can do, I think, is there 2 tanks there?
Yes.
We can talk about going to one single tank, which could also give us a smaller footprint, which would help bring room up the hill. Like I said, we're more than happy to try to accommodate as much as viably possible. Do you see any other way that we can bring this up more?
Well, you made a good point that the right-of-way comes to the property line, but the road is shown probably 6 feet off of the property line. We could move the road north. You talk about 10 to 15 feet, maybe close to 10, certainly not 15, because you see the contours crossing Roble Road. We would make the stopping point and the vertical curvature unacceptable.
10 feet is 10 feet, and 2 feet and 10 feet is a big difference. If you have a home here and you're out and around, that will concern me if that every effort can be made to go even 10 feet.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I'm concerned about, it's not in the writings. I talked to Michelle this morning about a stop sign being put there to stop people from coming up the hill, Lorna, and just blasting out into Roble. They would have to stop, and there's no evidence, and that would be one of my concerns, is that if we were to go for this, that there should be a stop sign put in there so that people would come up, stop, and then have to enter Roble, not just come, because there are some dead zones. But if you could move that over even 10 feet, to me, that would be a great help to anyone that has a house there. Thank you.
I have a question. This picture that has the stake, is that stake the property line stake, or is that?
There's some surveyors landing out
Center
there,
of the road.
Dave, and I want to know that myself.
That's a curve point. That's the beginning or end of a curve in the road. So it's not the corner. The corner is only a foot or so off of the concrete driveway you can see in the background.
That road would be a foot off that driveway?
Oh, no. The road is shown on the map about 5 or 6 feet off of there. the right-of-way comes all the way to the property line, but we're required to have more right-of-way than road, partly for the practicality of maintaining the road. If you have to work on a gutter, you don't want to be worried you're going to be hanging your elbow over a property line, if something needs repairs.
So you think we can get 10 feet?
Well, it sounds like it's conceivable then to slide the tanks around on the gas tank lot itself in order to maybe slide this road access away from this property corner, or move the right-of-way a little bit north away from the person who owns 15 Roll. Is that right?
I think we could get 10 feet. I'd try for more, and of course, what would be stopping me is the safety of people pulling in and out of the road. And by the way, I've always kind of assumed there would be a stop sign there, that not on Roble, but, on this proposed new common driveway road.
I noticed that corner on the property is actually very close to Roble. Even though it's easement, it's very close to Roble as it is now. Is it like within 20 feet or so between lot 15 and Roble Road right now? That corner looks
From here to
very
here.
close to the road as it is.
Yeah, it's 30 feet, there's about 30 feet of road crossing
So
the
that
proposed
access
tank
point
lot.
is already very close to Roble.
Correct.
I mean, I don't, maybe it's been considered, maybe not, but maybe they can distribute via truck rather than bulk distribution. I don't know if that's been discussed. The supplier may not like that as much, but then there's no tanks at all. I mean, that's just a comment. I don't think you guys have to answer that. It's just,
I don't think that's,
they put it in when they developed this subdivision.
Yeah.
Lot 15 and so on. That distribution was put in at that time.
yeah.
I'm not suggesting that you take the burden of taking that on. I'm just saying that that is an option.
Yeah.
Right now, this access to this private property is very close right now to Oak Road here.
So, JS West owns the property, or they do not own?
An employee of JS West owns it and leases the space.
So you've been dealing with the employee.
It's the owner. The owner is the employee.
Yeah.
So the company does not own the parcel. Yeah. So private individual who we have an agreement with. Yeah. But what I understood, we actually discussed purchasing it. We discussed some other options, and I wasn't able to find an agreement to eliminate the tanks from that location. It was the desire of the owner to keep it and maintain that, as I think it's an income.
I can appreciate that. That's a third-party arrangement.
Yeah.
Gas lot would become very expensive property if you wanted to tie it to.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Ragland?
No. Thank you. Take care of it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Folks, I'll open the public hearing now. This gives everybody in the audience an opportunity to address the commission, whether you're for or against the project. We'd just like to hear from you, and we'll give you, each one of you, 5 minutes in which to make a presentation.
Sorry, guys. Good evening. It's a little rushed today because I just received notice of some concerns as of last Friday, I think. So I had to get down here and get some information and read it and go through it. And today I had an opportunity to visit that site that is adjacent to the road and talk to the owner of the property and review the property as the map, tentative parcel map with Paula here. So it was a really nice opportunity to get the information I actually was looking for. So I have some copies of this. I don't know how many you need. I did about 1 million of them, so that's why I'm late. So I did one signed on the top, and we can pass those around. Extras I'll take for the residents. My name is Barbara Farkas. I'm a president of a nonprofit organization called Tuolumne County Citizens for Responsible Growth. I'm sure you've heard a lot about me lately. We are responsible, by the way. And I did receive notice from some the community adjacent, some neighbors, some concerns about this project, and so I had to go see for myself. And I think I gave you, no, I didn't give you all of them. Here we go. I said thank you, Ms. Kellogg, for having us here today, and to the Sonora Planning Commission. Very recently, I received a call from community members expressing concerns, etc. I was able to contact city planner for documentations, which you have before you. As of today, I visited the property of Mr. Ron Piper and listened to his concerns, observing property markers and photographing scenery from his backyard. These are our observations we wish to relate to you as far as possible modifications of the plan you have before you. The proposed Robles Road, I put, and shoulder actually abut Mr. Piper's driveway and corner lot survey marker. After discussing the design with planner Ms. Paula Daniluk on behalf of Mr. Piper, CFIRG requests at least a 5 to 10 foot, which I was glad to hear you say 10 feet, clearance from the said driveway and corner markers. The objective is to maintain a sense of privacy by eliminating traffic disturbance and to protect a small tended oak tree, which he has been nursing, that is immediately adjacent to the driveway. The current propane tanks require a specific hazard clearance. We are understanding that from the roadway, and although they could be placed into the ground, that was the suggestion I received today as a possibility. Then if they were placed underground, then that would eliminate the need for that hazardous clearance requirement. Looking at the large number of oak trees adjacent to current properties, it would be appropriate to establish a setback distance from the neighboring property lines in order to protect this green barrier for any riparian habitat that is associated with the seasonal stock ponds, and also to protect the established neighborhood viewshed. The residents who contacted me directly did not realize that this was a meeting to approve a tentative parcel map, and the final approval would be made once specific conditions were met. Today, we ask for consideration of the request before you to be added to the list of conditions of approval for the final parcel map. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Nope.
My name is Maya Morrison, and I have a few comments that I'd like to make because I also live in Cuesta Oaks subdivision. If the address is on Preston Place for this new proposed idea, they should be using Preston Place Road for their access. And it is not a landlocked parcel inasmuch as there is access through Preston Place, even if it's for only the one remainder. The people all in the neighborhood received an undated letter from the department here, and it also had a major mistake in this notice of public hearing, where it does state that, I have to find it here, that this would be divided into 4 parcels and a remainder, and it does not fall under CEQA because of the fact that it said 4 or less parcels. It should have read, or it said less than 4 parcels. Now to me that's 1, 2, or 3 parcels. That's less than 4. I didn't hear it said no. Perhaps the developer should have determined the status of the road and accessibility before he purchased it. This proposal is mentioned as a, quote, driveway. What's the difference in the city code between a road and a driveway? That's a question for you. I mean, it refers to it as a driveway. Well, usually a driveway won't service more than 1, 2, or so houses. There's nothing to prevent a straw man situation where the owners of these 4 parcels then decide, well, I'm going to subdivide mine, and they can divide theirs too. Therefore, we're looking at 9. The pitch of the driveway appears to be non-conforming. It's my understanding from being a real estate broker for over 40 years that you need to have 2 points of accessibility in case of an emergency. This property would only have 1, Roble Road. If there's an emergency on Roble Road, those people can't get out because they would not be able to access Preston Place. Perhaps this could be chained off at Roble Road as they did in Apple Valley. Thus, the primary access road would be Preston Place. This proposed, quote, driveway makes Mr. Piper's house a peninsula lot surrounded on 3 sides by roads. I'm not aware, maybe perhaps Mr. Garnon's aware of any others that have 3 roads surrounding a house. I'm not aware of them. We realize that Mr. Royce does build a higher class and nicer home. But if these are to become perhaps 9, as Ms. Danlick said, there only have to be 1 acre. Well, some of them are 2-acre parcels, so therefore those could be split. This is not a NIMBY action, a not in my backyard. We just feel that this, quote, driveway doesn't fit in with the subdivision. We all purchased there, many of us, many years ago, on the fact that we like our underground utilities. We like the low-density traffic, which will be possibly a lot. These people will not be subject to any CC&Rs. Ms. Danlick also suggested that they could run a business out of their house. She said 25% of their square footage could be devoted to a business. I mean, could they have a mechanical repair shop or something there? We don't know, but we don't want the noise. But how is that noise different than a deaf person turning their TV up loud? So I just don't see that this really fits in the neighborhood. And also, was TUD contacted on this? Because it's my understanding, usually they supply hookups for the amount of total build out of a subdivision. Now, they're asking to increase this amountage. So that's pretty much what I have to say. I recommend a no vote.
Thanks, Ms. Morrison. Next up.
Give me 1 second, sir. Okay. First of all, I'd like to not have this count against my speaking time. And I received an email from the owner of 24 Roble Road, right across the street from me. Her name is PJ Lamb. And I put on here, I received email I received from PJ Lamb, owner 24 Roble Road. I'm going to give this to you. And then this is it. Hi, Ron. With regard to the letter from Sonora Planning Department, which I received at the end of last week, certainly not enough time for me to plan on being at the meeting Monday. I am not sure that I can get a letter to the Planning Department for Monday, but I do agree that the excess next to your home and across the street from my property at 24 Roble Road does not seem to be a good idea. As you have mentioned, property values will be affected, and at this time, my custom home is now worth $100,000 less than when I bought it in 2005. I have no idea where Preston Place is in relationship to Roble Road. Is it off of Shaw's Flat? Okay, well, you can. If so, that would seem to be the best approach. Okay, it's not there to Roble instead of Roble Road. And please feel free to quote my comments on Monday, as I do agree the proposal would create additional traffic, noise, and generally not in any way be good for our neighborhood. Please contact me with any comments. Okay. And it says, please, right here, it says, please feel free to quote my comments on Monday, as I do agree. Okay?
Sir, you've been speaking on behalf of another person. I'll allow that. Now you have your own time.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Ronald Piper. And, oops, put the wrong glasses on. I'm sorry, I'm a bit nervous here. Forgive me. Thank you. I'll just read this to you briefly. Now I've sent emails out, and I sent another one covering this afternoon, but I'm just going to read a little bit of it so I hear my voice. I want you to all know I'm Ronald Piper, and so I'm just going to read this. I'm opposed to the project as it is presented because it will put a road right next to our driveway that will be used as the main road for the subdivision. It will enter and exit from Roble Road. Our house is at 15 Roble Road. We are a corner lot. We have a street on the south side of us, on the west side of us, and if you allow this project, we will be turned into a peninsula with a road on the north side of us. This road will abut our driveway and run alongside of it and be built right next to our house without any kind of noise or any other kind of barrier or buffer. There are now beautiful trees and shrubs right beside my driveway. We bought our house 11 years ago and paid top high market value for it. We bought this because of the neighborhood and being located within city limits. If it had a road there, we would never have bought our house. When we went by it, we wouldn't even have stopped. We would have just drove by and kept driving. Now, it's like this other lady said, when we bought our places there, I looked at this map, our realtor told us that it's dedicated for the gas lot. It shows it on a map. Okay, and I was told that this will, which I know that because like I just said, if we'd have drove by that house and had this road there, we'd have kept driving when we were looking at it. And we're not opposed to Royce building on his property. We are opposed to accessing this property from Roble Road. And she's already covered some of this stuff. They're scheduled to be 4 houses, but or lots, whatever, and what's to stop them from being split at a later time. And you could have, from the way I read all this, there could be 9 houses. And if it turns out to be 9 houses, I would guess like 27, these are big, expensive houses. So I'm thinking 9 houses could easily present 27 more vehicles coming across that road, probably more. And we're terribly concerned about the noise and the safety. Even if you move it up 10 foot, it's still going to be right next to our driveway, And I'm concerned about the safety and everything to my driveway. I could see nothing on those plans about a soundproof barrier or wall or landscaping. And I said, just quickly, so I wrote on, if that was made into a fire access and moved over some, I could understand that, and if they had a soundproof barrier and put in real nice landscaping, but it was only used for a fire access, and it had a locked gate on it. And then the houses across the road, one of them was PJ's that I just read. When the cars come up like that, that house is going to be hit with headlights at night. Because they'll be come up, her house sits a little bit to the left of it, they'll come up there and they'll turn off like that. And others have mentioned, safety coming out that road. That's going to be a safety problem because people come down that road and that's going to be a hard place to see. And I just don't think it's a good idea, and I appreciate Mr. Royce needing to make money, but what it's going to do for us, my wife and I are both senior citizens. My wife has a very serious disease. This is, from the time we got that letter, this has been extremely upsetting to her. Does anybody care about our health, our well-being? Like I say, when we bought that house, we bought it, this is it. We can't move anymore, That's it for us. And it's just really hard, Mr. Royce wants to make money, but at our expense, go find it. My thought is maybe you could find another place to develop, And I guess that's about all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Piper.
My name is Dr. Peter Lee. I'm in 44 Roble Road, so I too, like PJ, I'm next door to PJ, so I too will be somewhat impacted. My house is more or less opposite the propane tanks. I believe Maya Morrison has raised a number of questions, one of which is it's landlocked, and if the main axis is going to be off Roble Road, and there is a fire of some kind in that neighborhood, then how do people get out of the landlocked road? I think the answer possibly what was suggested, that the main access and the egress should be on Preston Place, a roped off area for the emergency on Roble Road. I think that does make sense. The gentleman just raised a good question. He has a house that will be impacted with roads on 3 sides. We're all concerned about the quality of life in that subdivision. I've been there since 2004. I enjoy the quality of life, even being a Brit in this neck of the woods. It is a quality of life. We are all concerned about property values. We've seen a decrease due to the economic climate, so naturally we're concerned about this. But it is, as was mentioned, a landlocked plot. You do need an egress, you do need emergency consideration, and I don't think that's really being addressed, and it should be addressed. And also the fact that, as Mrs. Morrison said, the 4 properties or the number of properties could be subdivided, and that would make either 8 or 9 properties. That is a major consideration for me, living opposite, which is now the gas tanks, but thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before I take any more comments, I'd like to get some clarification on something, because there's a recurring theme or a recurring concern here from the neighbors. Well, if there's a parcel map that's proposed 4 parcels and 1 in remainder, you can't 4 by 4 off that, can you? That's
No.
as good as it gets.
The Subdivision Map Act has the requirement, once you've split into 4 parcels, that's it. If you split it into more parcels, then it's a subdivision, and there are completely different requirements. So once these 4 parcels were approved in the map of recorded, creating them, they would never be able to subdivide again.
So for purposes of this parcel map and this proposed development, 4 is the density that's going to be allowed.
With this proposed parcel map, yes. If this goes away, and I don't know if the applicant would come back with a subdivision or would sell it and somebody else came back. When we were talking about the 9 units that would be allowed by the general plan density or the zoning, that's what would be allowed with a brand new project. But with this parcel map, it would be limited to 4 plus the remainder of the existing house.
Was this flown by all the city departments, police, fire, everybody else?
Yes.
Did they all sign off on the access the way it's proposed as far as the tentative parcel?
Yes, they did. And it also went out to all of our advisory agencies, including TUD.
Okay. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, folks, in case there's some continued concern about increased density or emergency access.
Mr. Chairman, regarding emergency access, is there a requirement for that in this case?
The emergency access, there is a allowable distance for cul-de-sacs, which this falls under. In addition, recent building code law has changed to require fire sprinklers in all new residential homes. And those were typically the conditions that you would apply in the past, would be to require sprinklers, but they're already required now by building code. So this access does meet the requirements for a single point of access for the 4 lots.
Paula, is the remainder house, they're still using the other road?
Yes.
They're not using this one?
No. So only the 4 newly created parcels would come through the new access point.
question for you regarding, we keep going back to Prescott Road. Where are we with that? Isn't it out of the picture?
It is not an identified road either by the county or the city. There is an access easement for the existing single-family house only. One house. That's all that is allowed to go through there. And
What would it take to make it for all? Is it even possible?
in order to make that a public road, access through there, the existing structures, I believe Mr. Anderson mentioned it earlier, would be within the right-of-way that would be needed. So there would have to be some kind of either arrangement or take of those properties. And then the bigger issue, which we've dealt with other projects, is State Route 49 is a Caltrans right-of-way. So when you start talking about what type of an intersection would be required onto the Caltrans right-of-way, it's a whole nother world.
Our fire department, I understand there's a hammerhead that was going to be put in there, and that we went through the fire requirements, basically, according to what I saw here. There would be a hammerhead down there so trucks could turn around, people could get down the road and turn around and get out of there.
Yes, the fire department has reviewed this, and they are comfortable with the
Accepted. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I didn't want to interrupt the public hearing. I just want some clarification here. So come on ahead, folks.
Hello, I'm Roger Hanlon. I live at 37 Corte del Encino, directly across from Mr. Piper. I have no problem with the building of homes in the proposed Preston Place development, but my neighborhood of Cuesta Oaks is a pure gem for those of us who live there and the city of Sonora. You do not poke a hole in a gem in order to have quick access to build houses. The proposed driveway is an example of inadequate planning or no planning at all. The proposed houses could be as high as 8 or 9, we kind of covered that, and should have regular street access, either private or public streets. And I would implore you to look at Shaw's Flat. Has about 3 or 4 of these driveways where 2 or 3 houses sit down the driveway, and you actually see fire hydrants sitting in the middle of the woods for some of those houses. It's inefficient, it's poor planning, but that was just ad hoc planning, because those houses are all built different times, different builders. Here we're talking about a planned development, and you're going to make the same mistake, except in a bigger way, to my proposal. But you ought to look at those driveways. The proposed driveways has many drawbacks for our neighborhood and for the proposed houses to be built. Garage, mail, and emergency vehicles are just a few of the drawbacks for this steep driveway. And I encourage you to go down there. And the farther you go north with that road, the steeper it goes. And it's very steep now. So I don't know about getting any further to the north. As for Cuesta Oaks, increased traffic, vehicles, lights, and noise will bring about decreased property values. We already talked about it. I oppose this driveway as a quick, inexpensive solution that is not consistent with good planning for our city or neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have a low voice. Can I pull this down? My name is Barbara Davis. I live at 55 Roble Road in Cuesta Oaks. That's Lot 17, which is directly to the right of the tanks. My house, the tanks, and Ron Piper. When we purchased our home 26 years ago, we realized that that 9-acre field behind us would eventually be developed. And access from Highway 49, is what we thought. I understand that the homes that Evan Royce builds are high quality. I have no argument with that. But now, I was here to back up Ron Piper as far as the road next to his house, and I find that now they want to possibly move those tanks closer to my house. I have maintained that property for 26 years, and I don't appreciate the fact that those tanks would be moved over closer to my house. And I still don't understand why the Preston Lane entrance could not be pursued. There's also the Dawsey Road off of Highway 49. That's a possibility. So I hope all of you at some time, before you make a decision, if you could go in the neighborhood, look at this situation, look down the hill, and before you make your decision. And this is the first I've heard about the tanks being put underground. Those tanks serve that whole neighborhood, which that neighborhood, I think, was established about 28 years ago. So it just doesn't seem right to go in and disrupt it. So that's my feeling.
Can you see the tanks from your house?
I beg your pardon?
Can you see the tanks from your house?
Oh, yeah, yeah. When you're looking at the front of my house, they're right down below. I'm not sure how many feet from my house they are, but they're close.
How would you feel if the tanks were underground? How would that affect your feelings?
Well, that would be all right, but are they going to be moved over closer to my property? That's the first I heard that...
Danger or fire or explosion, is that what you're thinking about? If it's underground, it wouldn't make any difference.
I don't know. Because...
Trying to get your feelings that you're talking, sure, I can see you wouldn't want it moving towards your house. If they're going underground, out of sight, out of mind, they're gone. So that would relieve some of that concern.
But if they're going underground, why would they have to be moved another 10 feet over towards my property?
I can't answer that question, but underground to me is a better situation anyway.
Yeah.
That would relieve one of your concerns right now, and that is you've got the tanks coming your way. Well, I can understand that, but if they're going underground, which would mean the road might be able to move up or over the top, then that might be better. Just want to get your feelings.
I don't know, like I said, this is the first I've heard this evening. When the Royces have spoken to me, they've never mentioned that at all.
And this is my first, I didn't know about underground. I spent 2 days out during both sides of the road. In front, I talked to Mr. Piper. I went down, I tried to access both of the roads off of O'Hara and Prescott down there. Also looked at the tanks and was very concerned about the situation. So I kind of know where you're coming from, but the visibility of having the tanks in the ground would be something that, if something's going to happen, would be a very positive thing for your standpoint.
It might, yeah. Like I said, this is the first I've heard of it.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Okay.
Thanks, Ms. Davis.
I just have a couple questions. So thank you, Mr. Richardson, for going out and looking at the area. Did anyone else go out and look at the area? You did. Mr. Eaton and Mr. Garnon?
I was unable to go. I just got back in town and was unable to.
There's no law that says you have to. I'm just asking.
No, I would have liked to, but I just didn't.
Okay. And this is a tentative parcel map, so this would need to go to the city council. No?
No, that's incorrect.
So where does it go from here then?
The Planning Commission has final approval authority. Is it on? Is that off? Okay.
It's just not very loud on that
The Planning
mic.
Commission has final approval authority of tentative parcel maps. So this would be the approval body unless it was appealed.
Okay, so then it would be the parcel map.
There are requirements for tentative maps and there are requirements for final maps. So once the approval on a tentative map is given, there's usually conditions. Once those conditions are met,
Oh,
then
okay.
the final map is submitted to the city engineer.
Oh, okay, and then he signs off. Okay, so that's the process. So if they're not happy, they'd have to go through the appeal process, and that would go to the city council.
That's correct.
Okay.
Only parcel maps where there is a dedication of a street go before the city council. Otherwise, where they have to be accepted. Otherwise, it's done just at the planning commission.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then, once this progresses, will they require a site development permit? So, once the parcel map is changed, the general plan update or whatever, I forget how it was called, so I didn't see the whole thing, then that would take care of that, and then the property owner would be able to do whatever he wanted on that property, given what his designation is as far as the zoning. Do I have that right?
You want me to answer that? Yes?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so once the map is recorded, so we've gone through the parcel map, the conditions have been met, the final map has been drafted, and the city engineer approves it, and it's been recorded, those then become finished lots like any other residential lot in the city, and the general plan and the zoning regulations would be applied to any building permits that were then pulled on the properties.
Okay, and those would be his?
Well, he currently owns them. He could sell them. It's up to him what he does with them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, is there anybody else who'd like to come up to the commission?
I will.
I'm Joy Avila. I live at 86 Corte del Encino, and I happen to be the last property owner on the street that abuts this property. It's right behind me. And it sounded good to me, the whole development, because I'd rather have four homes behind me than low-cost housing, apartments, condos, 30 houses, 10 houses. So I like the idea of these large lots. I can understand these folks' concern with regard to the road. One thing I heard today that would concern me is it true that they could have a business on these properties? That would concern me. If it's a home, I don't have a problem. If they're going to have a business running out of their home, then it's another thing, like a used car lot or I don't know, just a...
Then we get a little clarification from staff on that.
Yeah.
Because the residential use is serious limitations.
Right. Right, so the only type of business that could be operated in the residential zoning that is on this property would be one that falls under the home occupation guidelines and the regulations associated with a home occupation. The primary defining factor of what is allowed as a home occupation is that the presence of the property maintains its residential essence. It's limited to not allowing anything that has more traffic than would be generated, vehicle or pedestrian, than a normal residential structure. No signage is allowed. The home occupation permits that are issued by the city tend to be things where people are operating a home office, such as they're doing their invoicing or their bookkeeping. They may do like the medical transcription type of business out of their homes. Sometimes it'll be someone who goes from their home on site to another business to provide their consulting services at that point. But what goes on at the residential structure is only within a portion of the house, and it doesn't change the essence of the house. So I think I heard earlier something about a car mechanic or something like that would never be allowed as a home occupation.
Paula, if this was to go through as proposed, would these be R1 or RE designations?
RE.
RE.
The current zoning is, there's not a zone change before you, so the current zoning would still be
I
in
believe most
play.
of Cuesta Oaks is all R1.
It is.
So would any potential home occupation or home business type thing in an RE zone be much different than an R1?
No.
Not at all.
Okay.
So what happened then, Mrs. Apple, is the exact same thing that's going on in your neighborhood right now.
Okay. I may be the owner who's lived in the area the longest. I've been there 29, nearly 30 years. And this development's about 30, 31 years old. And someone mentioned the tanks and how long they'd been there. Well, they've been there quite a while. And so anyway, I don't have a big problem with it, but then I don't have the road coming near me either. I'm set back enough. But I will have, I'm sure, a house right below me because it's one of the level areas. So it's not the hillside. So anyway, so that's my concern. And like I said, I'd rather see 4 big parcels back there with nice homes on them than have this development not go through. Somebody else buys the property, or he decides to try and, put more on it. So that's my feeling on this whole thing, but I can understand their feelings too, so.
Thank you very much for your comment. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Clara Marks, and I live at 84 Roble, and I object to the road going through there. When we come to Roble now, we come down Shaw's Flat Road, make a right-hand turn on to Corte del Encino, almost an immediate left onto Roble. If they put the road in by Ron's house, it's going to be an immediate left, an immediate right, and an immediate right. And I think it's going to be a dangerous situation there. I am concerned about the propane tanks. So we'll see, but I do object to the way it stands now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Dr. Morrison, and I'm opposed to this project right now. Mostly it's traffic that's bothering me. If you're going to put a stop sign on this new exit road, you're going to have 3 stop signs before you come to Shaw's Flat. People in this county have a heck of a time reading 1 stop sign, let alone 3 of them. Driving out of Corte del Encino onto Shaw's Flat is a life-altering experience often. People don't stop. And there is another big subdivision planned up the street, which is going to compound it. It's going to throw more traffic around the school and more people running the stop sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Again, I'm Dave Ragland, engineer and surveyor for the applicant. I wanted to make sure I spoke during the public portion. Mainly, I'm here for questions. I did want to say a couple of items by way of getting the big picture. One is that the loop made by the beginning of Corte del Encino and Roble Road serves about 28 parcels. We're looking at adding 4. Concerns about the safety of dead-end roads. The dead-end portion of Corte del Encino is longer than the one we're proposing, and it serves about 13 parcels. Concerns about the safety of a driveway. That's really just semantics. For something serving 4 parcels, this will be a 20-foot wide paved road. It is relatively steep, but it'll be within the city standards, and we've all driven on 12 to 15% roads around this county if we've driven anywhere. In terms of undergrounding the tanks, the client wants to underground the tanks, does not intend to move them closer to any other private properties at this point in time. And that was about it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I guess I had a question for Mr. Ragland.
Come on,
anybody. We've talked about the distance. I'm Brent Helm. We've talked about the distance from the propane tanks to the road. What is the NFPA code on that? Is it 40? I heard 40 feet, or is it 25 feet? Does anybody know the answer to that one?
It's dependent on the size of the tanks and the location. It's 10 feet for what we talked about with this project. And the fire chief has reviewed that and is in concurrence with that.
10 feet?
Based on the various, if it's buried.
If buried.
Yeah.
If buried. As now, it's 25? Is that correct?
With the current configuration, yeah.
Because they're over 500 gallons?
Yeah.
Okay, I heard 40 feet, and I...
No, that was the right-of-way of various roads in town, but not this project, when we were talking about what a public right-of-way was.
There's a 40-foot right-of-way proposed along the new core.
Is there going to be an excessive road pitch entering the intersection, or was there going to be a retaining wall by the tanks? Because that road's like this, the proposed road, and then Robles is like this. I just wondered how all that's going to work.
Yeah, that would have to be engineered to city standard.
Okay, so it'll be non-conforming?
No, that's not what I said. It would have to be engineered to city standards. So once the parcel map is approved, the next step is to do the actual improvement plans, and those are submitted to the city engineer for approval, and that's where they would deal with how that connection would be made, and that would have to be done to city standards.
And just so you know, sir, in our packets, the city engineer did give us 2 or 3 pages of background, and I never saw any adverse comments with regards to the pitch or slope about the road. Just so you know.
All right. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I want to talk about value and purpose. My name is Michael Royce, property owner. I grew up here in Sonora, just off of Tuolumne Road. And I grew up in a smaller neighborhood. And when I was about 12 years old, they tripled the size of our neighborhood. They developed the property. I grew up on this property, chasing cows, building forts, doing boy things, making trouble. And I remember the community meetings, talking about what was going to impact us, our fears and concerns. And in the end, when it was all finished, all that fear and concern disappeared into nothingness, and what we were left with was friends that we called neighbors, a better neighborhood in every way, and a stronger community. And that was my experience growing up. As far as purpose goes, I'm the sole provider for my family. It is not just about money, it's about providing for my family and providing for my community. I plan on living here the rest of my life. I was raised here, my parents lived here, grew up here, so I don't want to bring something to the community that isn't a good thing. And that's why we've made the decision so far, what you see on the maps, the 4 parcels instead of 8. The way I door knocked at people's doors to talk to them and answer questions. And so as far as purpose goes, we all know what it's like to provide for your family, and that's what drives me. That's what driving me to create something. And as a young man in this community, it's hard enough as it is. There's not a lot of great opportunities for a young person to provide for their family. You have to work at it. So I'm 30 years old. Every single dollar that we've invested in doing what the city has asked us to do came out of my pocket that I've been saving since I was 18 years old. So it means a lot to me. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Ramos.
I just have one question, Mr. Chairman. You door knocked everyone. You didn't, I'm right opposite the tank. You did not make contact with me.
I spent as much time as I could. I live in Yosemite, 2 hours away. I drove down on my own time to door knock. I spent an hour and a half with Joy, another hour with another person. I spent as much time as I could. I drove 2 hours, and so I did the best.
Sir, we really need to address the commission and not just people that are also speaking on behalf of the project, whether for or against. So everybody's had their turn. We'd like to try and keep it moving that way. Thank you, though. Anybody else would like to address the commission?
If there's no one else, can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
As I said before, I did not realize that there was the possibility these tanks might be buried or they might be moved over. If that decision is made, will I be notified in any way?
That would be part of the action taken tonight.
If the tanks were to be moved?
Yeah. You can.
Moved or buried?
Yes. The applicant has indicated he will be undergrounding them, and that his representative just said they would not be moved. So unless the code requires it, that would be part of the action tonight.
Well, for purposes of our discussion, we have to just make a call on what's been proposed here. And if we want to condition this in any other fashion to accommodate neighbors for driveways or setbacks or anything else, we'll get to that. But the idea, the concept of even burying tanks was foreign to me before tonight.
Yeah, this is the first I've heard of it.
But it might be a good thing, too.
It might be, yeah.
Thanks, Mrs. Davis. Mr. Lee, or Dr. Lee, you've already spoken once, but if you feel like you need to ask us again, I gave Mrs. Davis there some time, so if you have any other questions for us.
No, I appreciate it, though. Thank you very much.
All right.
You're very good.
Anybody else?
Yes. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address the commission. You guys may not be rookies at this, but I am, so please bear with me. I have some questions here. One is that the paperwork that I've received from the city over this refers to 4 lots and a remainder. Isn't this actually 5 parcels?
No, as a part of the Parcel Map Act, I think I can answer this one. People are allowed to bust up a piece of property into 4 parcels and have a 5th in remainder, which is not considered a part of it. It's a remainder parcel of the map itself, but they can create 4 additional mapped parcels. Up to.
Okay.
Is that right, Paula?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Kind of odd wording to me, but if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. Maybe Mr. Ragland could help me with this next question. The slope on that property hasn't been noted in these engineering drawings that I've seen. The very crude estimate I made of it is that it exceeds 20%. That could activate a CEQA and require an environmental impact report if the property is over that slope.
You're probably asking the wrong guys about that.
Okay.
Would you like me to defer to Mr. Ragland?
Yeah, if you would, please.
Dave?
Slopes are in the range of about 5 to 35%. Some of the more demanding rules come into effect when you do a major subdivision, which is part of why we're looking at a parcel map for this stuff.
Right. If I could jump in, it's more of a CEQA question than the engineering. The interpretation on the 20%, when you're looking at the overall parcel, which is the full project area, there's some areas that are flatter than others, and then there's some areas where there's quite a bit of slope, which he was referring to, and that's right along the roadway. But the analysis of the full parcel, the slope is under 20% overall. At one end, it goes from 2130, and the other side of it is 2030. So there's really not overall a ton. One of the parcels is a lot flatter than the others. There is slope on 2 of the parcels, but they all met the 20% overall when it's applied as an average to the lot, which meets the CEQA exemption requirement.
Okay. I didn't know how an average was determined. Apparently that's already been considered. The only other point I would have about it is that when I bought my property there, I do live on Roble Road. I was given a parcel map of that section. And it notes on there that this is referred to as a gas tank lot. And I think it was reasonable for us that considered buying there to assume that that's what that property would be used for in the future. And then to suddenly have the game plan changed midstream here is my objection and the main basis of my encouraging you to deny this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
May I make another comment?
Sure. Brief, please.
My name is Ronald Piper. Okay, and my neighbor Joy was concerned about low-income property or houses being built down there. Well, it's zoned the way I understood that you can build one house per acre. And one house per acre, you're not going to get low-income house, and they're supposed to be RE. That's the way it's zoned, right? What's that? Ranch estates, residential? Residential estates. So with that zoning, there's no way they could put low-income housing down there. That's the way I understand it.
That's not what I said.
Oh, I misunderstood you. I apologize.
I said if the owner were to not do this development and change his plans totally, maybe he would do something else with it, which could include multiple units and such, more than just 4 parcels.
Okay.
Folks, I can't have you talking to each other. We just got to address the commission here, please.
I'm sorry. I just wondered, I apologize for misquoting you, but I just understood that there's a maximum one house per acre. That's all.
I think your point's well taken, Mr. Piper. I think with increased density, you'd have lower prices probably. And what's been proposed, I think, is as the applicant has suggested, it would be a so-called higher-end house. And based on economics, parcels that are configured and sized this way will usually accommodate an upper-end house.
I'm sorry, again, please.
Parcels that are proposed of this size usually accommodate an upper-end type of home.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but, we don't have to worry, because...
I understand.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the commission? If not, I'll close the public hearing. And thank you very much for your comments. They're quite heartfelt. And believe me, this is not an easy one for anybody.
I have a question for Paula, if he's over there. Okay, if this were denied and the Royce family took this property and sold it or gave it a different approach and went ahead and went into a lot split, would they still be able to use the same access road probably if they split it the way they could go to its max? Would it still accommodate this big split? We're talking about the concern that if the property wasn't developed with 4 houses and they turn around and say, okay, we're just going to go for it and have a big semi-subdivision, would this road access on Roble work still? Would it make it possible to still actually do that big split?
That's not the project that's before you. If they were to go to more than the 4 parcels, then we would not be with the parcel map. We would be looking at a subdivision, and that would be a whole different ballgame.
Okay, so we don't know whether access, would there be any access concept? What would they deal with then?
I would have to look at what was proposed and how the layout of the roads were going to be done and things like that, because it would be vastly different than what's before you. Yeah, and that's not the project that's before you tonight.
I'm just thinking about them saying, well, I'd rather have 4 houses down there than 8. Might to make them look at that concept, because I want to know what happens if they decide, yeah, we're going to go ahead. We deny it, they go ahead and say, okay, we're going to split it into the whole max of that property. Then how would they come in? They'd have to go for another approach, but it could be done.
We would have to look at it, and at this point, this is the only access that has been provided. I don't know and can't tell you right now that access of the reduced roadway would be adequate for more lots.
But it would actually have to to be studied. Could be, could be possible. They don't know. Okay, thank you.
Who wants to weigh in first?
I'll start off. Okay, this project right now, as I look at it, is very similar to the Arco situation over here on the other side, where there was a Arco gas station and a large project that was brought to us, which we went through almost the same situation. And the problem is, as Mr. Eden said, it's really tough, it's sad. I lived in Sonora all my life. I was born and raised here. For people to have beautiful homes or have homes and then bingo, all at once property is bought and developed around them. I think at the time that they bought their homes, they probably saw the land over there and thought, well, yeah, nothing's going to happen over there. But they knew it was there, unfortunately. They knew there was land there. They knew there was a possibility. Just like over here at Arco, when the homes were bought up above Pesci, there was land down there and possible developments, but they still bought. And now things are happening, things are progressive. The Royce family paid for this property with their own money. They bought it. And if these folks owned that property, they wouldn't want to just let it sit there. So this is a real dilemma, and it's a dilemma for me because I've been in business all my life, and I know that when you have property, you want to make money, and also you want to live in a peaceful home and have a nice area. So we've got a real concern here, and it's a tough one. And I look at what the lady in the blue, I don't know her name, said that, wow, if they put 4 nice homes down there, if the tanks are put underground or moved over as much as possible, and the developer were willing to do that, and the stop sign was put there, that would be a heck of a lot better than what might happen down there. So I'm standing here, I've got a motion on both sides of the fence. Mr. Royce and the people who live here, this is a real tough one, but they bought the property knowing there was property down the hill. And how do you deny him? If you say you can't use his property, what is he going to do? Turn around and sue the city, sue these people? That's my comment.
I struggle with this, and consistent with some of Mrs. Morrison's comments, based on the fact that when people bought their houses, everybody that was paying attention saw a gas tank lot there. So I don't think anybody assumed that that was going to be a key to the front door of a development of some type. However, it is an island, a very unique little island piece of property. And when I look at the big picture on this thing, if anybody, whether it's the applicant, the Royces, or anybody else, was to exploit the potential of this property, I mean, farmland in that location, I'm sorry folks, is a dying breed, it's gone. It's really surrounded by residential use. So anybody that's going to propose something that would be consistent with Sonora's general plan and zoning would want to do something like this. I believe that to be true. The access off of whatever easement or obscure access there's been worked out off of Preston Place doesn't sound like it can accommodate something like this to me. So this makes sense, and I think with some tweaking, it can be even better than proposed. But I see this as a neighborhood compatible kind of a development, and I'm not going to apologize for anybody for having a gas tank lot that can be used as an access, but by golly, it makes sense, especially in considering the exploitation of this property's potential. So there's one or a couple other things that I'm troubled with, just by appearances in reference to on the map, are the setbacks around these stock ponds, which were probably more, I would assume, those were dug years ago for rainwater catchment or entrapment. And whatever habitat they support, it was artificially created, and I think that those setbacks are too aggressive. I would relax those, because the kind of a house and crowding that would take place on the lots that can be used for residential purposes around these ponds, it would back way up to lots 14, 13, and those people down in Corte del Encino. I think that would be inappropriate. And one elderberry bush, I'm sorry, dig it up and bring it over to my house. Doesn't make any sense to me.
I think that was Jerry's recommendations anyway.
I think it's unfortunate that these come up, it's hard because, we can relate. Everybody in this room, including the developer, can relate. They've shared that. They know what it's like to be on both sides. This land is private. What catches my attention is it is in compliance with the general plan. It is consistent with Title 17 and the subdivision map. And it is exempt from CEQA as drafted. The developer, whether it's the Royces or a future developer, somebody's going to own this land and want to do something with it. As Chris pointed out, it's not livestock. It won't happen that way again. And so, the issue and the topic is not going to go away. It's consistent with the R zoning of our city, and that's what makes it hard. We all buy something here, we live here, and we want to keep what it looks like and the comfort of it. And the nerves are legit. The nerves are legitimate. They're great. It seems like most of the conversation was around the tanks. I've driven this. I've driven it from all the angles. Preston Place is not accessible. Preston Place doesn't even have a bolt turnaround. You have to back out to get, you drive up in there and there's about maybe 8 or 10 residents up there. You can't even turn around up there. And so those days are gone when we'd be able to develop like that. They kind of happen. And so we have a general plan now and Title 17 that circumvents that. Now, we can't do that now. There's been great points brought up tonight on both sides. What catches my attention also is that the access, it is close. The property line is close to Roble. And as some of you have brought up, it was, 31 years ago when this was developed. And there was nerves at that time on how it would access Shaw's Flat and the more vehicle traffic on Shaw's Flat. That's a bigger topic down the road. It is in the R zoning and it is in compliance. It's gone to the department heads and it's been viewed that way. This developer is stated that they're willing to concede to work. I don't know if you would get another developer like that in the future that would be willing to work as the Royces are to work to maybe bury the tanks and put up barriers and sound barriers. And I think that there is great opportunity, optimism on the side of development in that because of their willingness to develop at the level of only 4, you probably will find that your property values have a great opportunity to rise rather than fall. And so I know that you can see it on the other end. I would be the same probably. I'm just saying, I'm trying to encourage here, mostly because this is in compliance. It's like what Mr. Richardson pointed out. We recently had another issue with the ARCO, and it was in compliance. It wasn't something that we can actually say no to in that respect. But we can. It looks like there's good conditions on this project. So, from my view, this is a good, clean project. And it seems to hinge on whether we could make it a clean project for the homeowners and the neighborhood that's existing that's there.
Well, I feel the same. I have feelings for both sides, especially the homeowners. I'm a homeowner here in Sonora for 40 years, and things have been built around me. I lived in Strawberry most of those 40 years, but for 12 years I've been down here. And if there's a way that this could be worked out that would be more acceptable to the homeowners, as far as this entry onto Robles Road with some landscaping, some type of, especially burying the tanks, it's a definite plus. I mean, if those tanks are gone, that adds to your property value. They're not gone, but they're out of sight. Ron, your property, you happen to be in the worst spot of them all, I guess. And I feel for you and your wife. It's, but the Royces seem to me like they're really trying to work and make this thing as acceptable as possible. Because everybody's right about another developer could come in here and just not care. The Royces are family people from Sonora for generations. So I think it's a real clean project too, especially if we can work on this entry by Ron's place. Make it more private for you, even though there is a road. And I'm sure they're willing to work at that. I mean, maybe you'd end up with quite a bit of new vegetation between you and the road, new trees, some type of barrier. People across the street, the headlights, that's another issue altogether. They're gonna get those headlights, and that's something that I can't see being fixed with this, but that's all I have to say.
One question about this gentleman's oak tree that he was concerned about. If the tanks were moved or buried and the road was moved over 10 feet, save your oak tree that you're concerned about?
Yeah, if he was, Mr. Ragland, if I'm not mistaken, said that if they did that, they could move the whole road from the way it's drawn out now over 10 feet. And he's telling me, or I understood him say there's a 6-foot clearance right now between my property line and where the edge of the road would be. To me, it didn't look like it on the map, but anyway, if he moved that up to 16 feet, that would certainly be better.
Would it save that tree?
Yes, it would.
Well,
And hopefully they would save the trees, all the other trees, right? Excuse me, sir, but you were out there and I've got them in the pictures.
I saw him, and I'm a tree lover, I'm an animal lover. I'm compassionate with what you're doing there.
And you know, like I say, we've tried to maintain those trees ourselves over there. And you know, if we got 16 foot over there, it should be a lot better. I'd like it not there at all. Like I mentioned, if we did drove by there, when we looked at that property and purchased it and seen a road there, we might have slowed down and said, we're out of here. And Paula, I think Paula mentioned that they have to come through a couple of lots there or something to make it, or?
Yeah, there's multiple lots.
Yeah. Well,
let's keep it to commission. Thank you, Mr. Pike.
Well, I want to thank you all because you covered everything I was concerned about, so I'll save the CO2 in the room. My only issue was something that we've all kind of touched on, and that's having some kind of a sound barrier. And I'd like to suggest that as like a condition number 14, some kind of verbiage to have some kind of a sound barrier on that road.
That could include shrubbery.
A wall, shrubbery, whatever.
Vegetative thing?
Sure, yeah, whatever
Wall
works.
doesn't seem.
I'm not a sound engineer, so.
It'd be a wall up to the point where it wouldn't block driving. It would certainly help a lot of the sound and movement coming up the hill, other than just where you would have to be able to see when you came to the stop sign. That probably would be something that would help sound, and shrubbery could be in that area. A question for Mr. Royce back. So, could you guys go over 16 feet? Do you think you could do that? How far? 10, 12 feet?
I think, in talking to Mr. Ragland in the back, I think what we would ask for is 10 foot to the edge of pavement minimum. We will shoot for more. And as you know, this is a tentative map. As we get to a final map, we'll have actual engineering, which would have to comply with their city engineers' requirements. And the geometry and the slopes of that intersection are going to dictate how much we can actually do. And I don't want to commit to something without having that. We would strive for more. I don't know what number is possible. The other thing that I want to prevent is I don't want to get closer to her house, and I don't want to move those tanks up the hill. She's got it landscaped nice right there, and I think some of it comes a little farther over the line than where it's at, but it looks really nice, and I don't want to affect that. I want to put them underground. By putting them underground, it reduces that fire setback. And we've talked about the tanks a lot. Currently, those tanks don't comply with the fire setbacks from the street. By doing what we're doing, we're going to bring those into compliance, and it's going to create more space to go that way. So if we could write a condition that said 10-foot minimum and, you know, encourage us to do more.
That's very fair.
That's what I would be happy to commit to. And additionally, if that gives us more room for a vegetation buffer for both sound and visual protection from that. That gives us a space to plant and do something with. And I was asking Dave if he had any ideas on specific plants. I don't know if the city has a list. Personally, I would prefer to do something native that fits in, that looks nice. You know, so drought resistant, absolutely. But yeah, happy to accommodate those concerns.
The city does have an arborologist.
No, he's retired.
Yeah.
He's retired.
Oh, is he retired? Okay.
So, yeah,
Arborist, that's a word.
We've heard a couple different comments from the,
also, I want to go over some of the conditions.
Girls.
okay.
Nice teacher.
Yeah, no, we are, I just want to make, okay, go ahead.
I'm just a little concerned that I want to make it really clear to the public, because we keep talking about the final map coming back, right? And I want to make it really clear to the public that's here in the room that this is the opportunity for public comment, this is the public hearing. The conditions that are set tonight are the conditions that will follow with the map. It'll all be reviewed by the city engineer and city staff. And because there is no dedication on this map will not be going before the city council. Once it meets its project conditions, you'll be able to final it and you'll move forward, but it won't have another public meeting. So I wanted to make that really clear. So any conditions that you guys want to propose on the project based on what you heard tonight, and Paula's going to clarify, I know a couple of the language things with you that you guys have kind of thrown out, need to go on tonight as any additional conditions, because there's not another public time for this map. This is the time when this map's being heard, this is the time to set your project conditions, and then once the conditions are met, they final the map, and then the map can be recorded. So I just wanted to make that clear, because I think there was some confusion on going to the city council and what the next process was going to be. Once the map's final, then it's getting, doing their grading permits and getting their building permits and all of that. But this is the time for any conditions that want to be extra conditions that you guys are talking about tonight. So I wanted to clarify that. Also, the only way this project would ever be heard by the city council was if somebody was to appeal your decision tonight. And there's a 10-day window for an appeal of the decision of the planning commission, and that comes into the community development department. So I just wanted to clarify kind of how this project was going to proceed, because there's a lot of things that were talked about. So now Paula can talk about project conditions.
So just if I may interject, are we good with a vegetation barrier?
I think it's great.
Okay.
I also would like to see coming up alongside of Mr. Piper's property, a wall, at least as much as would be engineered to be visually acceptable for where people are going to stop, so he would get some of a barrier from the vibration, noise, sound of people driving up the driveway, to have a wall put in there, whatever height would be determined what would be most effective to prevent sound from coming through, and how the wall come up to the point where he could, cars could stop and see. You couldn't have the wall come right up to the road because you couldn't see, but it could come up partially, like Gary was saying, the wall maybe so many feet back, and then have a stop sign there. So that's something I feel is very important, the wall, the vegetation, and certainly stop sign.
Maybe we can include Dave's comments in the motion as one of the conditions.
Yeah, we can put this all together.
Evan, can you just be on standby for a second?
Sure.
It was mentioned in the conditions without specifically requiring you But it's been mentioned that correspondence has been received between you and TUD, and TUD's evaluating the project. It is your intention, though, and would you mind a condition to the effect that you are going to have TUD at the property for water?
Not a problem at all. Yeah, that's fine. And as I stated, we already have 6-inch mains stubbed to the property, which is quite unique, so that makes it easily attainable.
That, Chairman, that doesn't need to be a condition, that is a requirement of city development.
Yeah, but we can't.
I said the TUD does not have to be a condition of the map, it's already a city requirement. You cannot have a development without public water and sewer.
Even on a parcel map?
Even on a parcel map.
Really?
Really. That's part of your general plan.
But we could consider possibly adding a condition to bury the tanks? Is that something that?
That's okay.
I understand? Because there was a lot of discussion.
It's possible you want to commit to either burying it or moving it away from everyone's property into your lot, just so you have a choice, because you could give an easement. What was that? If there was some way that.
I thought we couldn't.
Well, you'd have to give an easement to the gas company.
I'm okay with burying it.
You're gonna bury it?
I'm okay with burying it. I think it's a good idea either way.
Would the owner of the tanks be agreeable to that?
Yes, and we've already discussed that, and that's a cost that we would assume.
I've given some special accommodations to people here, but this is we only had you backed up here to ask specific questions and reference aspects of the project. Ms. Morrison, one quick question is what you wanted to ask.
Can you construct a driveway over these buried tanks?
They'd have to, whatever they can do, they'll have to do it in compliance with the gas company and city regulations.
You can't build the road over it.
Can't go
There's
over
a There's
a setback from it.
The fire code requires some setback, even if it's buried.
Propane tanks that you can't for septic tanks.
So that's why I'm wondering how he's planning on burying them, but
Because there's enough room to bury them and put the road next to where they're buried. By burying the tanks, the amount of distance necessary for the road to be from the tank is lessened. So it allows him some movement on the property of where the road is actually built. If he doesn't bury them, the distance is greater, which pushes the road closer to Mr. Piper's property, which is what we're trying to avoid.
Sounds like there's enough real estate here for him to be flexible and yet sensitive to some of the neighbors.
and is this burying them or onto your property a condition of this?
Well, no, in a minute.
They're requesting burying it.
We'll let you know.
I'm okay if that's a condition.
So I have a question. For the conditions, if we add this sound barrier, is that under B of our conditions of approval? Would that be added to that part?
I would suggest that you just don't get into the actual language of sound barrier. A wall, wood fence, something like that would be more appropriate at this point. Otherwise, it requires and triggers noise analysis and different type of building materials, and it gets a lot different. I think the idea was these are just 4 lots. It's residential traffic.
Wall's fine.
You know, a fence, wood fence, or a wall that prevents noise. Yeah.
As is also consistent with vegetative screening for sound barrier.
Right, and or vegetative.
Statement like.
Yeah, you could say vegetative screening or fence would be my suggestion.
I have another comment, and something that I brought up earlier. And it may be addressed by Mr. Ragland. I'm not sure if it can be done by you, Evan, but I'm not happy with the restrictive developable area of the...
Actually, I'll answer that question. I understand your concern. There are a lot of people in the foothills who have that concern. That is not our choice to make. That decision on what is an acceptable setback from any waterway considered a U.S. water is the Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction and the State Department of Fish and Wildlife. We do not have the say in that. So, future development of that parcel will have to meet whatever those agencies require. If they are proposed to do a single-family lot, the one lot in particular that has those ponds on it, and say somebody wants to put a gazebo next to the pond or something like that, they would have to get the biologist to look at the existing conditions and the impacts that they were doing and whether it was considered a take or not. You can do some things without it, but you cannot remove that requirement of the setback. That's something that the biologist sets, not us.
So that's gospel.
It can be looked at the time, the setback that is shown on there right now and the setback that was in the biological report is the one that is the standard setback. When you have an actual plan for that lot to put on a single-family home, you can have a biologist look at your exact details, and it can be modified if they can find that it's not impactful to the pond with what you're proposing. So you could encroach even more into it, but that's not something you would do at the map level. You need the actual plans for the single-family house before you do that.
So then, it would be up to the developer's discretion to petition whoever
Yeah, once they have a house.
to relax those setbacks.
Yeah, once they have a plan for the lot, then we can have a biologist actually look at the plan and say, you know, you really don't need that big a setback, you're only taking this little piece of it, you're fine.
I didn't see it in conditions here anyway, Paul, but I can't hold back on stuff like that.
I
It
understand.
doesn't seem practical, and it would bastardize the neighborhood.
I completely understand. That's one of the ones I personally think is a little far-reaching.
Well, Chris, there may be some hope. The EPA is going to look at this again, so this
Yes.
whole waters of the United States thing.
I feel your pain. I was just back in the southeast last week and talking to some of my cohorts there in the planning world. They have entire counties that are under this regulation. Not 1 square inch of their county is not covered by this regulation. So it will probably change in the future. We just need to be able to have something to hold to the parcel and look at.
Well, in the spirit of it, I'm just trying to help the neighbors out here, because if you're pushing houses way up against the setback, a building setback line, as a result of things like this, it doesn't seem practical or.
Yeah. But I agree with your sentiments. I also trust your girls here. I think they know their stuff. I would hope that when we go to actually apply for a building permit, that we will be able to push it as far as we can that way. But as she said, the process for that will be done at that time, and when we go down that road, that's what our objective will be.
One other concern that I have is, and I've been witness to these situations a lot here because I'm a real estate broker. I've been practicing here for 38 years. When private roads that are outside of the city or county maintenance system, or even CSAs, are created, I like for future transfer, for succession, for all those people to enjoy the same responsibility of maintaining that road. And it was alluded to here.
Maintenance agreement.
Conditions D.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, address future maintenance of common driveway and encroachment to Rover Road as noted on the final map, or with reference to a recorded agreement or covenant.
Yep.
That's really important to me.
In perpetuity, it'll be maintained.
It could be a deed restriction, it could be or a part of it, it could be a deeded thing, or it could be a formal roads association report. Something has to be done.
There will be a mechanism for maintaining that, and it's a little out of my skill set to describe exactly what that is, but I know that we've discussed it and that will be happening. And additionally, it was pursued this way to not be in a city or county maintained system, because I personally know that those systems are burdened by the amount of local roads that we have and lack of revenue. So these will be paid for by those people, and it will be maintained to a high standard.
And the city probably wouldn't have accepted it in the road systems.
John, you had something?
Well, the comment is, I certainly understand the feelings of the homeowners. I understand Mr. Piper's feelings, and just like we all have said here, all the commissioners here struggle with this. This is a really hard situation to deal with. We have people that have their homes who they love the peace and quiet. We have a developer But like Mr. Jensen said over here, the Royce family has been in this community for a long time. Far better than having a developer from the big city come up here and just ram his way through here. Mr. Royce, I think, will work with the family, work with the commission here to make this as nice and as good as possible. That's far better than what I just said could happen. So it looks like, although these folks are unhappy with having the development down there, if we can, like as Chris said, tweak this to make it better and as good as we can, I think it's the best situation we can deal with. And I think I'm ready to see it start putting this thing together with the tweaking. I think it's the best thing, and although it's not the total answer for the homeowners, but I think with the Royce family, what they can do, and the feelings I sense of Mr. Royce willing to work and doors kind of opening up to kind of different feeling that was once there, I think, at least that's my feeling. So I think it could be a really good project rather than something that could be a nightmare down the road in 5 years.
I have one more question. Going through the conditions of approval that the commission wanted to add, there was discussion of a stop sign. Is that a condition that the commission wants to add? Whoever makes your motion, can you direct staff on how you want that to be?
Whoever makes a motion, we'll address it.
So right now, just for clarity, I have 5 additional conditions that y'all were considering adding. One was the 10-foot to edge of pavement minimum with city engineer approval of scope and intersection standards. The second was a vegetation buffer or fence along Mr. Piper's property. The third is burying the tanks. The fourth is a maintenance agreement for the private road maintenance. And the fifth would be a stop sign at the intersection.
Did you get wall in there?
Fence.
Okay,
Fence
all
or
right.
screen vegetation.
And is there any way to say if, that there would be, the road would be moved over at least a minimum of 10 feet?
That was the
more?
first one.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it.
And we'll shoot for more on that without impacting it.
Shoot for more.
It was a minimum.
Minimum.
For those 4 items that you just mentioned, Paul, or 5?
5.
We probably should, he wants to retain the oak tree.
Yeah, for sure.
We can do that.
Can we try to save this oak tree?
Yeah, so don't put a wall up.
Yeah, with a wall it would
Put a wall around it.
Yeah. We'll plant around that, yeah.
Yeah, because that's a site distance issue.
So it's vegetation, all that could be saved there will be saved.
All right, which one of you guys wants to make this motion?
I'll make it. I guess I would like to move that we go ahead and approve this development as what we're doing here based on the way it's written up in the planning commission agenda.
With the 4 findings and the 18 conditions.
All those planning conditions that were originally in the application form, plus what we just added.
Second that motion.
Any other discussion? Okay, call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you, and thank you very much for your comments. We did the best we could for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's think about a minute or two break. Are you guys ready? Plan up
So ready. If you guys are, okay, we're going to go on to the next item, and that's the comprehensive 2017 comprehensive amendment of the general plan. Now, this isn't new to you. We held 2 just discussion sessions on this to do the comprehensive general plan. One was on January 9th, and the other was February 13th. And we took any changes that you requested at the January 9th meeting, and we brought those back to you on the February 13th meeting. so you guys had already reviewed that. There's no additional changes that we have from that February 13th meeting. Again, this is mainly, the idea of this comprehensive plan is to better align the general plan with the existing Title 17 zoning, which was not the case when the original general plan was adopted. It's not that it will allow us to not have so many inconsistencies between our zoning ordinance and the zoning districts that we currently have, and it's just a cleaner way to get this general plan finalized and get everything into conformance. The recommended amendments basically revise text for clarity purposes, and it more closely aligns the general plan with the zoning ordinance. It eliminates some of our unnecessary goals and policies and implementation programs, especially those tied to the redevelopment agency that no longer exist. It also eliminates general plan items that have already been completed, and it also we have a lot of redundancy in the general plan from our different elements where they've repeated the same policies and programs over and over and over, which makes it very difficult when Paul is working on staff reports to get to cover all of that. So it's just more than we need to do. We're only 3 square miles. We need to keep it simple, and this takes it back to that more of a simple.
Rochelle, can I interrupt you for a second? What's the problem, Mr. Piker?
Oh. I flushed the toilet, kept running and running, I just didn't know who to tell.
Oh, okay.
But just now,
Ron's a plumber, he'll take care of it.
I just looked again and it shut off.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
All is good. Sorry, Rochelle.
Hey, no problem. Again, you guys have seen this. From here, it will move on. If you guys approve it, it'll be a recommendation for approval to the city council, and we'll move on and move towards it. Once the general plan amendment is approved at the council level, we'll finalize any of the zoning changes that we need. There were a few minor changes that we need to bring back, and we will bring that, through that process with you as well for the changes to zoning. And at that point, finally, since it's been since 2007, the general plan and the zoning ordinance will be consistent, which has been our goal for the last few years to get this done. So we are able to get there. Paula's going to go over the CEQA determination on this, just to clarify her findings on that, and then you can take any public comment or anything that we have. So.
All right, so in your packet was the staff report, and as part of that was the information of the CEQA determination. So I'm just going to go through it briefly, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions. We determined that the CEQA for the general plan update, even though it is eliminating implementation programs and policies and things like that, did qualify for the general exemption. Because there really isn't a potential to cause a significant impact on the environment. Majority of the items that we dealt with were editorial, deleting things that were stated in numerous places, but we didn't really remove that many. In your packet, it was noted that there were 2 implementation programs that are proposed for deletion that were listed as mitigation measures in the previous document. However, one of them has been completed, so deleting it isn't going to affect the environment because you already did that portion of it. And the other one is dealing with the flexibility of development on certain parcels, and that can still be done through the planned development district, which can be applied to any parcel in the city through the entitlement process. So basically the items that were being mitigated through those 2 implementation plans, one's no longer needed, and the other one, that wasn't the only way to implement it and to maximize that flexibility and density, and also protect your historic integrity of the areas. So based on that, we found that there would be no significant impact there, or potential for that, I should say. And then the other one was we did some edits to the land use element that really took into case the minimum lot sizes and the densities through those. And based on a comparison of densities between the original general plan and the proposed update, the number of units per acre that you could get in the densities did not change that much. And in part, the reason for that is you have topography in this area. So even though you say you can have a maximum density, and we're talking particularly about your residential, you also have your hillside ordinance that you have to take into account, and you have your topography you have to take into account. So even looking at the recent projects that you've had here, you never got above 3.6 units per acre anyway, even though you could get in the density 5.8 or greater. You just physically can't get there. So based on that, the number of units that you could get with the new density assumptions was really only half of the previously anticipated units. So again, there's not a potential for significant impact because you could never get there anyway on the density that was previously done. So based on that, we're recommending a CEQA exemption. And the resolution in your packet includes the language for certifying that and recommending that, I shouldn't say certifying, recommending certification to the city council, because as Rochelle said, that item will be going from you to the council for final approval. The other thing I would note, we did receive one letter, and that was put before you at your places tonight. I had a couple of conversations. As you'll recall, I mentioned back in January, we've met with the property owners of the special planning mixed use designated properties throughout the city, and went over their issues of what their concerns with their designation was, as well as proposed changes to that. And what was included in your text changes addressed what we heard at those stakeholder meetings. And before this meeting, we sent another round of letters out verifying for everybody that was at those meetings what the final proposed changes that you had considered were. And so this is one letter that we got in response to that. And then I had a couple of phone calls with people just asking for clarity. And basically, the conversation circles back around to the intent of the changes that we proposed for that mixed use was to take off the special planning because it required a specific plan in the current general plan, which is a very expensive process to go through. It's easily a $70,000 price tag for any parcel over 10 acres, and we thought that was not necessary. And we removed some of the other requirements for those designations to be developed, while still maintaining their flexibility as a mixed use designation, which is on the map before you tonight. So they could do commercial, they could do residential. It really opens up the availability and flexibility in that district while limiting the requirements for additional studies and things that are needlessly required right now. I would not recommend a specific plan for any of the parcels in your city. We've talked about this before. Usually you see that on very large projects where you're looking at how they're doing their infrastructure and their roads and all that, and they're creating some kind of Melrose arrangement to pay for those. And we're usually talking properties that are at least half the size of your city. And so what you have left for development, we don't recommend that on it. Other than that, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We have kind of gone through this, if you'll recall, back in the spring and late winter, page by page practically.
I got a procedural question. We did discuss the general plan amendments or changes that we're talking about as far as the house cleaning aspect and doing away with a lot of redundancy. So that was done in January and February. Why did it take so long to get to us tonight?
CEQA analysis. I was really trying to make sure that we covered the bases and could get you there on the exemption and that was a valid movement versus trying to go through a mitigated negative declaration, which would have cost the city a whole lot more. And also limited time.
So it took about 4 or 5 months to do that.
Well, limited time. Remember, we had another really controversial project or two in between there, and staff has,
Oh, I'm not saying
only so much time. No, but that's the answer.
It was fresh in our minds back in January, February, so it's kind of like.
Yeah, but then in March, we had that other project, and then that's why.
How long will this stand?
Till 2020.
20, that's the max, then it's gonna be thrown to the wind again, right?
It depends, to be honest. You have a housing element that's every 5 years. So the general plan's housing element, if nothing else, has to be done every 5 years. So you'll see something there. Really, it depends on what the city would like to do. If they look at it in 5 years and there's, say, not any big changes that you want to do, you can just keep re-upping it. Yeah, I mean, your town is fairly developed. There's only so many options that you want to do. There's some recommended things that you might look at in the future, but there's also dollars attached to that.
And there's some that we will eventually have to update, but because of the changes in state law. But that'll happen at the next stage, when the city does more of a comprehensive update of the general plan versus kind of a cleaning up of the general plan. And I don't know how many years that'll be from now.
It's part of it, and to be honest, part of it's a huge budgetary concern. The council would have to allocate tremendous amounts of money for you to do a full-on comprehensive update again, between that and the CEQA
I like to
document.
think that the last update we did to get to this point was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
I thought we did a pretty major overhaul of the previous upgrade.
And conditions haven't greatly changed.
No.
I mean, with the market downturn and things like that, as long as we can continue to keep monitoring the items that your housing element impacts and what state law requires, you may be able to do minor updates along the way and keep it valid.
Yes. That would be the goal.
Any questions of staff?
The concern that Mr. Casanetto had, SPMU, is that special project mixed use?
It was the previous designation, special planning mixed use. And as part of that designation and the requirements in the general plan, it required a specific plan to be done for any of projects over, I think it was like 10 acres or something like that. And there were other requirements to actually rezone properties. And again, part of this effort is to bring the general plan more in compliance with Title 17 and the zoning. So instead of us now turning around and having to do a whole bunch of rezones, it marries it a lot better. Because it's a mixed use designation, you could have commercial or residential. So we don't need to go in and rezone because both are compliant under.
Take on a case by case.
So when somebody has a plan and they know what they want to do, because most of the areas in blue, which is what that designation is on your map, they're properties that really don't have a developer yet that's interested in developing it, or they don't really know what they're going to do, but eventually they'd like to sell it and develop it some way. So when they get to that point, then they can come in, and the best implementing zoning for them at that time would be a plan development and just do a development plan.
Any other questions of staff? None. Go for the public hearing.
So I'm assuming that the letter you have is from my brother, if it's Benjamin Edward Casanetto.
Yes.
That is my brother, and he called me and asked me to come down and speak on this topic. The property is actually owned by my father, Benjamin Casanetto. It was purchased years ago, and the concern from our perspective on this is that the property was purchased as commercial, and by changing it to mixed use in our discussion, the concern was that by doing that, you're opening up the possibility for other people to come in and get an advancement on that investment that my father already placed in advance. So to us, we see it as a good thing that people can't go commercial because we have commercial. And so when you give them the possibility to go commercial, you're taking away the one asset that the old man bought. So for us, we would advise you not to do that, but mainly because it's in our best interest. The bigger question would be that property is placed next to a water treatment plant. And if you look around, the water treatment plants have been putting up solar farms. My dad, I think, wants to develop that possibility for that water treatment plant. His concern would be if you change the zoning, what issue that would cause. So if you have any comments on that.
You want to address that? Okay. So the previous designation was special planning mixed use. It allowed commercial as well. So that hasn't changed.
Okay.
I don't know if you caught what I said earlier, which is the existing zoning on the property isn't being changed. It's only the land use designation. So if you currently have commercially zoned property, that will remain. If you currently have residential property, that will remain. Because
Okay.
they're both part of the mixed use allowed. So either one is okay.
Okay, that
So
makes...
we're not proposing any zone changes, it's just the designation.
All right, so, but are there people who had property that was zoned for residential that can now have commercial or no?
They could have either way. It doesn't change that.
Oh, okay.
Designation does
So-
not change the land use that's allowed.
Okay, so even before all those people, they could have
They
been
could have
commercial?
still done it because they had special planning mixed use.
Okay, see, I don't think we understood that, so I'm glad that you clarified that.
The areas that were special planning, single-family residential, we just took the special planning off and just left them residential.
Okay,
So that didn't apply a mixed use to previously designated single-family.
all right. And so the real purpose of this is just basically to clean up so that everybody can do, I mean, I'm trying to figure out why you guys are really doing it.
Two reasons. We're trying to make it easier for people within the city of Sonora to bring forth a development project without causing them undue expense.
Okay,
And studies and requirements that they don't really need to do.
okay.
So that removed some of those requirements. And then the other one is to marry it more closely with the zoning. So you have land use designation, which is kind of the bird's eye view, and zoning, which is the implementation of that. Right now, they're kind of like this, and the city would have to rezone a lot of properties to bring them into compliance, which was a lot of changes. By making some of these minor changes in the way it's written, they now can be lined up without zone changes.
All right, but then I guess getting back to my statement then, does this create more people on the marketplace to commercially zone?
No, the zoning
Or
isn't changing. If they wanted to come in for a zone change entitlement, they could have done that before, just like they can now.
Just like they can now?
It would require the zone change, which is
Okay.
a separate entitlement.
All right, okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a question. So if we want to alter, they were talking about a historic zone on Washington, or alter the boundaries of the historic district, is that something that would go before the city council and not here?
No, it would go through both.
Okay.
Because that would be a zone change.
Okay.
Ultimately, and so the planning commission would make a recommendation on it to city council. We did not remove any of the programs or policies that addressed looking into that. It's just not something the city council has directed us to do yet.
So that would be a whole separate issue from this, so that would need to be a whole separate item.
So the only historic district that's designated in the zoning or in the city as a whole is that it's reviewed under design review. That's really where you see historic. It kind of calls out this little historic area. So in the future, if they want to expand that, they can look at creating a separate historic district. So that's a little different. But really, what really calls out the difference is when you get into the design review area. Because then it really looks at that little narrow area down in the corridor, and they have special requirements for them, as well as the sign ordinance.
Okay, so, but is any of that in this general plan? Isn't there like a little historic portion?
Yeah, there is a historic,
Okay.
and there is some programs and policies in there.
Okay.
But none of that's been changed from what was originally in the general plan.
Okay, so if we want to talk about that, that would have to go through design review, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's a mixed bag.
Okay.
So in the general plan, including the one that we're proposing, we didn't take this out, there are policies and goals and implementation measures that do things like suggest looking at incorporating the Mills Act into the city regulations. And it's worded along the lines of investigate or encourage property owners or things like that. So all of those policies are still left in there. That's one of those items of this very large general plan where it's very costly and it has a lot of impacts to your property owners. And that would be something that council would need to direct staff to really pick up one of those programs and investigate it and make recommendations to council whether they want to do that or not.
Okay, so that won't change this update then if we went back to that?
It would be something to circle
at-
back around to
Okay.
when staff, when the city has money and staff time to do it, and it's a high enough priority for council.
Okay, great, thanks.
When we completed the historic inventory, they have directed staff in the future to come back and look at the Mills Act and the historic, looking at it, and looking at a historic designation of some type for the downtown. And that'll all go through a public process at that time, and that'll go in front of the city council.
Okay, because this came up at that illegally held meeting last week, because apparently the dome is not in the historic district, and a lot of people thought it should be a historic building for the city of Sonora, and then the courthouse also is not in the historic district, so that was a big part of the discussion.
Yeah, and there's a difference between historic districts. There's several little areas and pockets in town you could look at as a historic district, but also the designation of an individual building, like the dome that kind of sits off by itself,
Right.
would be more probably appropriate as does it. And I can't imagine that it already has enhancement, but maybe not. It never has. Oh. So anyway, yeah, so you got these the buildings, that's a little different than an actual district.
The districts are usually much larger areas.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, they only go to halfway through the street, and so it's only like on one side of the street and not on the other side of the street.
And it'll always have a beginning and an end.
Right.
So somebody's gonna get.
So we can have that discussion at another time.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you would like us to take action on the resolution?
We would.
Gentlemen, I'd like to make a motion to address resolution number 710, 2017.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Ron. We adopt the attached resolution recommending to the Sonora City Council to approve the attached resolution to amend the general plan attached in A.
Very good. Thanks to Paula writing.
You guys do great work. Motion by Commissioner Jensen, and seconded by Commissioner Richardson. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
You guys do good work and make it so much easier for us to get through this.
That was a tough one, though.
Thank you, guys.
I mean, everything is there, we could read it, we could see it, I mean, you really helped me out.
Community Development Director's Report.
Yeah, I just have a couple things. One is, just like I said a minute ago, you guys are going to see some zoning ordinance changes now that we got through this. we have several items that need to be addressed. So we're gonna have some cleanup on our zoning now, in several different areas, including home occupation, one of the topics that came up tonight. There'll be several things coming through over the next meetings. The next meeting, I will not be here. My kid's going off to college and we're gonna spend some time together before he heads out. So Paula will be the only one here. And I think we should have an application for a design review, but we'll see if they get her paperwork. And if they don't, you guys won't have a meeting either. So
Regarding any of the zoning discussion you just alluded to, Rochelle, how much notice is given to the public for them to have input? Just a meeting notice, just a normal meeting notice?
It's a 10-day, it's a 10-day public notice. So it'll go out, but these are citywide zoning changes. They're not property specific. So it's just through a public notice, goes in the newspaper, gets posted. But you gotta realize on its change to the zoning, it starts with you, and then it has 2 more readings at the city council.
Yeah, that's what, because I don't want anybody stuck like a deer in the headlights on these kind of things. I want to make sure people have an opportunity.
They have-
If they're like Mr. Casanova tonight, if he thinks like this property is going to be, the value or the utility of it's going to be adversely affected by a zone change, these guys got to know about that stuff.
Yeah, if it's an individual property zone change, like you guys have dealt with before, they actually, they're noticed, even if it was a city generated one, we would notice them, they can come and talk to us. Otherwise, it's just noticed as a broad publication, and they get 3 bites at the apple. They get you guys,
All right.
and 2 bites at the city council.
Just want to
So-
make sure, because some people haven't been happy with just the notice in the paper of certain events happening. So
Well,
just
the problem
shotgun as
is,
best we can.
we publish in the paper, and unfortunately, people don't all read the paper, but that is the publication notification process, and then it's on the website. And I tell people if they want to stay engaged, they've got to at least look at the city's website, because there's no other way for us to get the notices out, so.
Anything else?
That's it.
I move to go home.
Well, I do have an announcement. I don't know if I should announce it here. Probably should. Sure. Good news is my son's moving home, and he's going to buy my house in Sonora. And the other good news is I bought a house in Jamestown. The tough news is I'm a short timer here, and I didn't mean to do that. And so I have to announce that I will be resigning because I'm moving to Jamestown. And it all happened very fast. I'm sorry. My son, when he announced that he'd like to buy our house, we thought, well, we'll just look around. And what we wanted to do was build. Well, we offered a price on a house in Jamestown, and we had a 28-day escrow. And so that was a surprise. And so we're not going to be residents of Sonora. So I have to announce.
Well, we're going to miss you. You're a good man.
We're going to miss you, Darren.
We are going to miss you very much.
I would be glad to stay, but maybe I'll have to get involved in Jamestown now. I don't know.
We've had great input, great insight, and it's been good having you. I'm going to miss you.
So is this your last meeting?
This will be my last meeting. I'll send a letter to Tim and Rochelle. I know it's in that day, but I don't know how I can make another meeting.
And then we'll
There may be a
go,
grace period. Okay, well then if there's a grace period, I'll make another meeting. I'm not opposed to that at all, but I will.
I think it's a 3-year. I think it's a 3-year.
so
I'm
we'll
okay
work,
with that.
we'll work with Darren, and then we'll go through all the noticing requirements again, and then
Yeah.
we'll.
So if anybody knows of somebody to recommend or to tell them to apply.
Well, and on that note,
Certain conditions.
there will be a transition for the purchase, so I am still the homeowner
Okay,
in Sonora, so,
very good.
and I live there, so, but to transition, so I don't know the legalities of all that. I'm
We'll
just
work with you
announcing.
on that, yeah.
Okay.
We'll work with Tim, and we'll figure that out, and keep
Okay.
you.
We will keep our ears open.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if anybody knows somebody that is interested, please have them.
Based on the flood of people that sought the application
The
for
first
John's and I.
couple times, yeah.
I know. that's-
We have some work to do.
Yeah.
Put a sign out and I have a quick question about that computer sign down there the guy put up for across the street. It's kind of oddball.
So you can have it up for 30 days, and then
Okay.
he has to take it down. You can have a temporary banner. Unfortunately, our sign ordinance allows for a very large
But
banner.
30 days. then.
30 days, and he can take it
Street on
down,
it.
and he can tab it up for 30 days, and then he
Okay.
has to take it down, and he cannot put it back up. You can't put the same
Oh.
sign back up.
It's not-
And he knows, he called and asked the requirements.
Okay, it's gonna make Joan so happy because it is in Sonora and she was upset.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Someday the city will redo the
Well,
sign
that's
ordinance,
30 days.
but,
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, good meeting today.
um,